There we go. There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's live chat. I'm Rebecca Fuhr. There's still plenty of time to get your questions in for today's live chat. Send them to DOC_questions. Questions always remain anonymous, and I only read your question, never your name. And while we welcome all of your questions, if you have more of a suggestion, I encourage you to send that to our DOC_solutions inbox. Speaking of questions, if you do not hear your question asked today, it could be that our directors needed just a little bit more time to form a response. Rest assured, I'm still going to ask your questions, but I needed to move it to the top of next month. So we'll still get those questions asked. And lastly, as always, if you ever want to go back and rewatch any of the chats, I always post the recording on the front page of DocNet under Executive Director Live Chats. And for our Executive Director this week, we have our new Deputy Executive Director, Melissa Smith, joining. First of all, congratulations on your new role, Director.
Thank you very much, Rebecca.
Yeah, what an amazing week we had across our department for our employee appreciation.
Yes, very much so. And we'd like to just take a few minutes to thank our amazing employee councils. You have worked tirelessly over this last week. Many hours of invested time in just ensuring that everybody understood how much they were appreciated, and we can't express enough of our just sincere gratitude toward your unwavering dedication. It was truly instrumental in making sure that the Employee Appreciation Week was successful. We also want to give a deep appreciation to the countless hours spent planning and securing donations, preparing food, and just the tireless work behind the scenes that our employee councils do on an everyday basis, but specifically for our employee council. We also want to thank those team members that help support our employee council with our management teams and just staff who also lent their support, who really helped in the number of facilities I was in, just really helped the employee council do some of those tasks that nobody else wanted to do, like cleanup after lunches and those types of things. So I just want to say thank you for your contributions and how much we really appreciate that. And then finally, a big thank you to everybody within the department. We can't do this without you. You were all greatly appreciated, and we can't express enough how much we deeply appreciate all that every single individual within this department.
Well said. Thank you so much for saying that. We have so many questions that we're just going to jump right into these questions. If you don't mind, this first one is for you. How is DOC going to staff the upcoming Sterling maintenance project, in which they will be bringing close custody offenders to CCF to be housed in J and M unit? Does DOC plan on hiring more custody and control staff to include case management and other disciplines to assist with this upcoming move in November?
So the department is in the process of developing a comprehensive plan for this project. We have already started by really looking at what some of the infrastructure needs will be at Centennial, and are working to get those in place currently, as well as developing a plan to identify staffing needs. And then we will be moving forward with hiring and filling positions to support those populations while they are housed at Centennial Correctional Facility. Over the next few months, we will finalize the plan, and then we will share details as they become available.
Thank you. We have former offenders less than 3 years since discharge who are being given waivers by the executive staff to enter prisons as volunteers. This is specifically RF2 CrossFit volunteers. It is as if the expectation is for staff and security to bend to RF2 rather than the volunteers' organizations comply and operate within the security boundaries of the facility. Why is this allowed, and what guidance would you give to staff that have that contact, and why is this program given so much authority and access?
So I understand that this question is specifically about RF2, and I will get to that, but I just want to take a few minutes just to recognize that volunteer programs across the board are essential to our facilities, to the health and well-being of the population, and that we have a number of volunteer programs that do have formerly incarcerated individuals that come back to do mentoring and peer support. They provide unique opportunities for personal growth and development, through lived experiences, and that is a powerful and relatable perspective for our current population. And so while I know this question is specific to RF2, I just wanted to as well ensure everybody that we are doing some of these similar concepts in other volunteer programs and peer-led programs across the department. In response to the specific concern around this volunteer program and the RF2, my main, I guess, encouragement for all of you is to ensure that the management team and the faith and citizen coordinator and manager understand the issues that are being had, that you're communicating that to them directly. If you still have some concerns, or if there is another issue that you don't believe is being handled appropriately, you can always take it to the deputy directors and or the prison program assistant director as well to help follow up with that. But let's start at the lowest level, making sure that the facility coordinator and manager are involved and understand your concerns and worries. While I don't believe that every facility will feel the same way that this question does around an RF2, it really leads me to believe that this is a very specific facility issue, and I recommend that you reach out to myself, to one of the deputy directors, and or to Carrie De La Rosa, the Faith and Citizens manager, so we can really try to figure out what the issues are and if it is something that we can overcome.
Thank you so much. On today's live chat, we do have a special presentation by our Associate Director of Fleet Services, Tim Strosenruther. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, we have some updates to our state driving policy.
We do, and I know a lot of staff and leaders within DOC have some questions and concerns, so I'm happy to elaborate more on this policy and have this discussion with you all today. So the universal policy, it's kind of divided up into a couple different segments. Hope you all don't mind. I'm going to kind of fly through this presentation a little bit. It's been built for a much longer presentation, but we'll just dive right into it. So the introduction. So you can find this policy just by Googling Colorado Universal Policies or going to DHR's website and looking it up that way. This establishes the expectations and standards while requiring agencies to ensure that only drivers or only staff with safe driving records are authorized to drive a state-owned vehicle as well as their own personal vehicle for state duties. This policy applies to all classified staff, non-classified staff, and authorized volunteers. The state made it effective as of March 31st, 2025. Why is this needed? So the state has an obligation to its employees, residents, and the general public to ensure that everyone is safe. The state is self-insured, and as such, we have a responsibility to protect taxpayer dollars. Automotive accidents are one of the few times when the Colorado Governmental Immunity Act, the CGIA, is waived. State driver eligibility. This is a very long list. I recognize that. What I want you all to focus on today is just what's in red and what is highlighted. So everything in black, we've already done a great job of. We already require. Maintaining a safe driving record, that definition is to follow this slide. And then this policy also reinforces the state's expectations that all drivers with CDLs adhere to the FMCSA rules and regulations. So a safe driving record, what is it? So under the Universal Policy Driving Standard, the state has defined the minimum requirement to be classified as a safe driver. So anyone that does not meet the qualifications of a safe driving record technically is not authorized to operate a state-owned vehicle or their personal vehicle for state duties. So under this policy, you can't have any convictions, and convictions is the main word here, within 7 years for reckless driving, vehicular manslaughter, driving under the influence, driving while ability impaired, one conviction related to bodily injury or death to another person, as described in CRS 42-4-239, eluding the police, and street racing. Within the last 5 years, you can't have any convictions for 3 or more careless driving convictions, 20 plus mile an hour speeding over the speed limit, 2 convictions related to distracted driving or use of a mobile electronic device as described in CRS 42-4-239. And then within the last 3 years, you can't have more than 3 moving violations or a total of 7 or more points assessed against your license. And you can't have a suspension or revocation of a driver's license within the last 3 years unless if it's for a non-driving related offense like unpaid child support. Automatic disqualifiers under this policy, so you can't drive a state-owned vehicle or your personal vehicle if your driver's license is suspended, non-renewed, or canceled. If you fail to apply with applicable policies, requirements for operating a state-owned vehicle, if you have not been approved to drive a state-owned vehicle by your supervisor or the human resources director or designee, and then if you require a breath monitoring device, also known as an interlock, to operate your vehicle, you would be disqualified from driving. Employee responsibilities, so maintain a safe driving record and driver's license. What is new for all of us, so now under this policy, we're required to report any citation or conviction, whether it's in our personal vehicle or a state vehicle, as we're driving immediately to our supervisor and the agency human resources director or designee. Agency responsibilities, so the big ones here, we have to contact, so anytime that there's a driver that doesn't qualify but is required to operate a state-owned vehicle, we're required to meet with risk management and state fleet to discuss next steps and see what that might be. This is a brand new policy for everyone, and we're all learning as we go through this together. We're required to develop policies and procedures. We do have an AR that is going through the approval process right now. So be on the lookout for additional communication around that. And then annually, we're required to run every authorized driver MVR record, just to make sure that they're meeting the requirements of a safe driving, policy. We're not allowed as an agency to purchase separate liability insurance. And then we are also not allowed to have an employee use their personal vehicle for work purposes upon loss of state-owned driving privileges. Violations of this policy, so for the employee, it could look like suspension of driving privileges or corrective and or disciplinary action leading up to termination as determined by the employee's appointing authority in compliance with the state personnel rules and related requirements. And then on the agency, if we fail to meet the needs of this, we could lose authority over our state-owned vehicles, and then any other remedial measure that the state agency might get inflicted upon them. Lastly, authority. So the appointing authority reserves the right to determine that an employee is not eligible to drive a state vehicle at any time. The first step for any employee with questions or concerns, reach out to your appointing authority. If there's additional conversation or guidance needed, I'm happy to help you out whenever possible. Reach out to me at timothy.strozenruther@state.co.us or by calling my cell phone, 719-301-8978. Thanks.
Thank you for that presentation. So if staff get any of these moving violations during the term of their employment, that would make them ineligible to operate a state rig for the timeframes listed on each moving violation. Is that correct?
Yep. So there's a couple of things staff should consider when looking at this. So under the new policy, you're correct. Once convicted being the key word, drivers would not qualify if they don't meet the records or that definition of a safe driving record. So all staff who are concerned, they should reach out to their appointing authority, as I previously mentioned. And then, as I also stated, this is a new policy and procedure for all state agencies. It's not just DOC. So once we know the extent of these issues, DOC is required to have a meeting with the State Office of Risk Management and State Fleet Management to figure out next steps. I do know that DOCHR is working with the Attorney General's office to determine the best approach for current staff who have issues from prior to the policy being communicated or going live. and more guidance will come as DOC learns more.
So how will we know whether or not we will no longer be allowed to drive based on this new policy? Is Fleet going to just notify us?
That's a great question. So Fleet Services, we're going to be working with HR and the Office of Inspector General to complete the initial bulk query, so all the MBR record running. And we're going to communicate any employees that are in violation of the new policy to their respective appointing authority based on the requirements of the Universal Policy Driving Standards. And then from there, as previously mentioned, DOC will meet with the State Office of Risk Management and State Fleet to discuss any drivers that are required to drive as part of their job. DOC leadership is actively engaged with the Attorney General's office, and there'll be some more guidance coming out for those staff who do not qualify under the new policy.
So what steps do I need to take if I was issued for a citation for example, following too close?
So with that is a 4-point moving violation. So on your record, once you're convicted, that is what would be applied. So the appointing authority in this case, once the employee is convicted, and especially since we don't have our MBR vendor currently available, they're still going through the DOC procurement process. But so the appointing authority would run your background, and then they would determine how many points have been assessed against your license. And from there, as long as you meet the requirements under the safe driving record, just reviewing that safety event behavior. But if you don't, then we would be required to meet with the State Office of Risk Management and State Fleet to provide next steps.
So I understand that under this new policy, staff can't have any 20 plus miles per hour speeding violations. But what if a staff member has this violation? Will DOC terminate them?
Yeah, so that is a real concern and a great question. So DOC, HR, and leadership, as previously mentioned, we're working with the Attorney General's office to navigate that tricky scenario. So the AR should be available shortly. It is going through the review and approvals process. When staff ask questions around this new policy, I think it's important to remind everyone that this is new for all state agencies, not just DOC. And it's a tricky one because this policy didn't exist when they got that violation. So as previously mentioned, we're working with the AG's office for additional guidance in these circumstances. Any employees that don't meet that requirement, we will notify the appointing authority, and then we will determine next steps at that time. There's more information to come.
Thank you so much for that presentation. We really appreciate that. And if you will stay on, we may have some questions for you at the end. So we appreciate you being here. We're going to move over to the Policy and Legislative Affairs Director, Adrienne Sanchez. Good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Hello. We have a new visitation bill as well. You want to talk to us about that?
We do. We do have a new visitation bill. So thank you for letting me speak to that just a little bit this afternoon. House Bill 25-1013 was actually introduced on the very first day of the legislative session, January 8th, 2025. And after roughly 15 or so drafts worth of amendments and an entire session's worth of discussion, a final version was approved by the Senate on May 2nd, 2005. It has not been signed by the governor as of this time. As introduced, the bill would have made visitation a right and would not have permitted CDOC to restrict visitation under really any circumstances. In addition, the bill as introduced would have created a pathway to litigation for denial or cancellation of visitation. I am pleased to say that we now have a bill that is workable at this time. There is no longer a direct path to litigation. And while there are some visitation rights enshrined in the bill, visitation itself is not a right. We also managed to obtain significant carve-outs to permit us to continue to utilize restrictions on the type and amount of visitation as appropriate. Hearing testimony focused on issues that visitors face when coming to facilities to visit or while engaging in our visitation clearance processes. So the bill also does include some aspirational goals for the department in order to improve and bring consistency to the visitation process as a whole. As I said, the bill is still awaiting signature from the governor at this time, so it's not currently in effect, but there will be significant policy modifications and some training necessary once the bill is signed. So please be on the lookout for additional information. To that end, for more information on this legislation and for a wrap-up of the legislative session as a whole, you can join our informative virtual session, the 2025 CDOC address, The Road Ahead, and that will be on June 3rd at 11 a.m.
Thank you so much. Some staff have not seen or heard the results of the long bill. Has it been approved? I heard there was a 2.5% cost of living on it.
Yes, Senate Bill 25206, the 2526 long appropriations bill, was signed by the governor on 4/28/2025, and it did include a 2.5% across the board increase in pay for state employees, as well as some funding for step increases for some eligible classified employees based on time and job series. So Governor Polis sent out a statewide email confirming this information on May 9th, and our own public information office also sent out some detailed information on May 10th regarding the step increases and the 2.5%.
I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to be talking a little bit more about this later in the chat. So thank you.
I bet you're right.
I bet you're right. Some offenders have substantial holdings in their inmate bank accounts, with some being approximately $20,000. Is CDOC looking at mandating a maximum limit for the inmate bank accounts as a way of alleviating pressure on offenders and limiting intimidation towards staff?
So this issue is actually addressed in Administrative Regulation 200-15. It states that balances in excess of $2,500 may be applied to any outstanding fees, fines, surcharges, restitution, child support that the inmate may owe. If the offender, though, does not owe any of these amounts, then in that same AR, section T, as in Tom, 2, states that offenders are only supposed to be able to access up to the first $1,000 of those funds, with the rest of that amount being placed into a mandatory savings account. So I would just ask that if there are some specific offenders or specific instances that you're having issues about or you have concerns about, feel free to let me know. Send that information to my office and we can work with inmate banking to determine the issues there and next steps.
Thank you. We have had I've heard so many rumors and questions about bringing ACA back. So I've gathered up some of those questions. So I'm going to rapid fire those questions and you could answer at the end. How's that sound?
Very good.
Has a decision been made that the department as a whole is returning to ACA or just clinical services? If so, what effect will it have on the rest of the department? How will it affect the currently unapproved compliance program? Will it be discontinued? And what kind of plan or timeline is in place to bring it back?
Thank you for that. So my group, so we talk a lot about legislation, but actually the compliance team reports through the policy and legislative affairs team. So we are evaluating a return to ACA for both clinical services and for the department as a whole. But there are several pathways that we're considering in terms of making that sort of a transition. And when a final decision on that has been made, it will be communicated to the department as a whole. So ideally, we would be able to retain components of the current internal compliance program, as this has been proven useful in identifying areas for improvement. But again, there's a lot of moving parts to a transition of this type, and no final decision has been made currently. But we do plan to be in a position to share some more detailed information on this again during the upcoming 2025 CDOC address, The Road Ahead, on June 3rd at 11 a.m.
Thanks for that plug again. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
We're going to move on to prison ops with Deputy Director Mark Fairbairn. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good afternoon.
What is the direction for supervisors who have newly hired intelligence staff whose English is their second or even third language but struggle with their accent? And what resources are available to help them with this?
Okay, so thank you. So first of all, I would say that cultivating a supportive work environment is important not only for supervisors, but every member of our department. So I think when we see a barrier, whether it's this or another that's identified, I think the supervisors and fellow staff need to take the initiative to give the appropriate assistance to them and offer those resources. And I know part of this question is what resources are available to help with this. In this specific instance, this depends on each individual's level and challenges. So I think the best approach to this specific one would be the open communication and offering assistance, and more importantly, the inclusive and belonging, making that staff feel comfortable to seek that assistance.
Well said. Why is security in the clinic not a permanent post? Why is it not mandatory that there be at least 2 security officers assigned at the clinic and at least 1 security officer inside the clinic at all times when inmates are present?
So that's a great question. And of course, security is one of the most important things, the most important thing we do inside our facilities and in our department. But each different facility, they all house a different population and all have different security concerns. So that is what determines the staffing in each facility. So for this question specifically, I would ask them that if they have concerns in regards to this, to reach out to their management team and voice those concerns. And then, of course, if they're not satisfied or have additional questions, feel free to reach out to either me or the other Deputy Director, Dave Lezak. But I do want the staff to keep in mind that the same offenders that are in the clinic, they're also in classrooms, they're in group sessions with therapists, in programs and with no security presence as well. So that's why staff receive the training they do, all staff throughout our department, to address these issues with offenders.
Thank you. Why doesn't the resource pool at each facility get incentive pay like other classifications?
So thank you. So the incentive pay, it was provided to designated staff and it was established within our partnership agreement. Of course, the department would love to provide this pay to all of its staff, as we believe everyone plays an important role in the operations. We do appreciate staff as well that are assisting with this post coverage, because we know that it is cumbersome, inconvenient, takes away from their normal job duties. As a side note, an email was just sent out from our communications department that as of June 30th, the incentive pay was discontinued for everyone with the exception of nursing staff. So that's just a side note.
Are we able to bring back 12-hour shifts anytime soon?
So that's a great question. And we are still examining the potential for 12-hour scheduling in specific areas of our facility. And this process doesn't involve close collaboration with our appointing authorities of those facilities and labor relations, as any schedule or implementation change must adhere to our partnership agreement. But we are still examining that and looking into it. So we are looking at it.
What is the expected range of supervision of a lieutenant and captain in the department? So how many people is one supervisor expected to supervise at one time?
So this is a great question as well. I would say for whoever this question is specifically, that they should reach out to their supervisor and their appointing authority if they have concerns. But because this again ranges depending on the facility, security levels, and also the position. A shift commander in a facility may have more staff assigned to them than a housing supervisor, or vice versa. Staff in higher level facilities may supervise more staff just because of the staffing ratios of units compared to lower custody units. But if there's a concern that they're over capacity or they're struggling with that, they should definitely speak with their appointing authority.
Would it be possible for a CPO to contact a facility like CSP to prior a shift and to volunteer for upcoming shift to alleviate forced doubles?
So first of all, I'd like to say thank you to all the parole staff that are doing this and assisting us. So both prison ops and the Division of Adult Parole have an existing process in place where community parole officers or team leaders, they can sign up for overtime at designated areas. Right now, Denver Complex, Sterling, and CSP are all approved for this. So if staff would like to participate in the overtime operations, can sign up. All they have to do is inform their supervisor or manager in the parole division. And we make sure that this list meets all the partnership guidelines as noted. And it's a collaboration between us and parole. So we do appreciate the help.
Great. We're already doing that. Great. Why are so many office doors closed at headquarters when staff are clearly in the office? I thought we had an open door policy. Is this not a safety issue? Is this not a safety issue since front lobby officers can't do rounds in the units to make sure staff are okay?
So first of all, I do want to say that all of our departments do encourage open communication and the open door policy. Staff often leave their doors open when the office is available. However, sometimes there is meetings and it does require the door to be closed. And with complete transparency, sometimes we forget to prop the door. If an office door is closed and you do need to get in contact with someone in that office, I would suggest reaching out to them via chat, phone, email. As well, staff that are in the front lobby or security staff here at headquarters do have access to all the doors here at headquarters, so they can make rounds in every office here.
How can someone force you to change your work assignment to a different schedule? This staff member was told that she is being forced to move to swings. There's nothing in policy that I read so far that says that this person should be forced to move into a different schedule.
So first of all, appointing authorities do their best to maintain the consistency of staff schedules. We understand the impact it has on people's personal lives. However, there is designated times where staffing changes or implementations need to happen where we do have to move staff around to maintain consistent operations inside our facilities. When this happens, though, we make sure we're in close collaboration with our labor relations department and meet all the agreements in the partnership agreement, specifically in Article 14.2 that gives a specific notice of the shift change. But I think the most important part of this is these are not decisions that are made lightly, as every appointing authority understands that impact on staff's personal lives.
Last question for you. Are there any non-exempt positions or classifications that are prohibited from covering overtime, custody, and control shifts? And can you describe a situation in which a non-exempt employee would be prohibited overtime shifts and overtime pay versus comp time?
So this would happen if a non-exempt employee did not have the proper training or certifications to hold the post that is needed to be covered. So an example would be a non-exempt employee that is not armed transport certified, and an armed transport certified staff is needed for a hospital duty or transport. That would limit it to a specific staff with that training or certification. So.
Thank you so much. And with the others, I'll ask you to stay on. I'm sure there'll be some more prison ops questions at the end, so if you'll hold tight. I'll switch over to the Director of Human Resources, Michelle Cottingham. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Rebecca.
Are there any plans to increase the number of PTO days per year? Is it up to DOC or is it dictated by the state?
Great question. DOC is not able to change leave accruals. These changes are dictated at a higher level than our agency. For everyone's awareness, sick leave accrual is governed by statute. So any changes to this policy would need to come from and be approved by the legislature. And for awareness, annual leave accrual rates were just increased by the state July 1st of 2022, and we do not anticipate any upcoming changes.
Thank you. During a recent town hall meeting, executive staff spoke regarding salary decisions as they relate to staff who promoted before the compensation policy went into place in October. Are there any updates on this?
When funding is available, we will review classifications where we fiscally have the ability to right size.
Thank you. Did CO2 positions change to allow 18-year-olds the opportunity to be work leaders in a correctional setting? If CDOC is lowering the requirements for this critical position of first line leadership, will they be lowering the requirements for each promotional position?
That is correct. Yes, the age limit for CO2s was lowered to 18 as of February 11th of 2025. And we have not had any discussions to lower the age limit with any other promotional positions.
So is this age requirement showing a positive effect on vacancy rates? And what has been the percent change in staff vacancy from then to now? And also, lastly, what is the change in the retention rates from then to now of newly hired employees?
Yet another great question. We lowered our age requirement on February 3rd, 2022, so separate from the CO2s. And the staffing vacancy rate prior to lowering the age requirement was 21.13%, where currently we are at 14.02%. Really excited to say that the retention rates for newly hired employees, when we changed that age limit, was 45.13%, where currently we are at 82.75%.
Great, thank you to you or you and your staff for researching all of those percentages there. That's a lot of work. If with over 86% of correctional officers being obese and our life expectancy already being 59 years of age, why would we take away coverage for weight loss medication that would improve our odds of better health and longer life expectancy?
So this is what we know. If you're currently using these medications for weight loss only, you will still have access to the medications after July 1st, 2025. Current prescribed members will receive direct correspondence from either Cigna or Kaiser, along with additional details, including the criteria for maintaining that coverage. Cigna and Kaiser have rolled out enhanced health management support programs to provide assistance to our staff. For more information, reach out to your concierge for your program at the 1-800 number on the back of your insurance card. And of course, anytime you can help or you need help navigating these spaces, feel free to reach out to our wellness team, and they're at DOC_wellness@State Colorado, US.
Great group right there. In regards to staff being required to fill out Form 1450-16A, will the department be looking into relationships, relatives, working for each other in supervisor and staff roles in the same work unit?
Another great question, and I just want to give kudos to everyone for completing the form. We had a really good response rate and are following up on the few staff that did not complete the form. To answer the question, yes, those forms are being reviewed and escalated to the appointing authority and/or division director for their review and resolution.
Thank you. We have some staff members who are confused why the job application office hours for current employees exist. If we didn't know how to complete a job application and interview, we wouldn't be an employee. Is that fair?
That's fair, but a lot of times staff want to promote. And so our employee services unit listen to our staff who have not been selected for promotional opportunities, and staff recognize that experience outlined in their application impacts their pay setting if they are selected. So as a result, ESU suggested having office hours and providing application assistance. And I was thrilled to hear we had a really good turnout for our very first session last week. There aren't many things we can do for our DOC staff that don't have a price tag associated with it. So kudos to our OHR team for identifying the need for this.
And we have more of those sessions coming up. Is that correct?
We do.
Yeah. Yeah, great sessions there. I understand the department can hire people with prior law enforcement experience at a higher rate than most starting CDOs, and this is to help recruit quality candidates. While being able to take prior law enforcement experience into consideration to increase pay may be a allowable factor under the equal pay for equal work, how can the department justify paying someone with no parole experience more money than people who have years of parole experience and possibly have also prior law enforcement experience?
Good question. We've talked about this before. Under the current allowable factors of time and series from the partnership agreement, along with relevant experience under our compensation policy, we have to adhere to those factors to be compliant with the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. If we only had time in class, almost all new hires and promotions would start at the minimum of the pay range unless they had previous time and series. Having another factor for experience allows people to be promoted within the department and not make the minimum of the promotional pay range, and allows us to be competitive in filling vacancies. As mentioned earlier, when funding is available, we will review classifications where we fiscally have the ability to right size.
Thank you, Director. Let's jump over to business innovations with our Director, Eddie Cayley. Good afternoon to you.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hi. The leaf balances in UKG versus DocNet are always different. Which one is correct and which one should we be going by?
So this is actually a great question, and the answer is it depends. It depends on the current system of record for your timekeeping. If you're at a facility that's fully transitioned into UKG, then UKG is the system of record for your timekeeping. If your area is still in DCIS as well, then DCIS remains the system of record for your time until you fully transition. The differences in the two systems are due to differences in entry in the two systems. And that is why it's so important for both you and your supervisor to review and authorize your time every month.
So if we notice a change in these two, and we want to make a change, do we contact payroll or do we contact your UKG team?
So regardless of the system of record that your time is currently in, the correction process remains the same as it always has, and it's defined in AR 1450-48, which is employee timekeeping. Please complete Form 1450-48B and indicate the changes necessary and whether the correction is needed in DCIS, UKG, or both. That form should then be signed by both the employee and supervisor and forwarded to payroll by email or fax.
Thank you. The Canyon City area lost their local radio station on January 1st of 2025. So is it possible for each staff to use things like Sirius XM or any of the Spotify apps? From what I understand with the Spotify app, is it possible to download playlists and it won't use broadband internet? Is that correct?
So we've had this question a few times, and there are problems with Spotify and other media applications which stream over the network. Most significantly is the impact on other services. There's a limited supply of bandwidth at every location. If we authorize use of streaming media, we put the bandwidth of the whole system at risk and run the risk of impacting critical services that rely on that bandwidth. We risk telehealth, legitimate work meetings and activities, or online training, which all require significant bandwidth to maintain. We can't set a limit to the number of users who can access streaming media during work hours, so we either allow it all or we authorize none. Most locations do have policies in place to allow for limited enjoyment of music in areas that are appropriate for such activities. Usually those are non-offender occupied areas.
So why has the department decided to outsource the copying of mail? With the budget shortfall, is it fiscally responsible to pay someone else for what all the mailrooms are currently doing?
So that's a great question. Mail continues to be one of the most problematic areas for contraband introduction and for dangerous drugs in the department. There's no foolproof method to ensure that a prohibited substance isn't present in a mail item. Off-site digital scanning ensures that no personal mail physically enters the facility, and it eliminates mail as an introduction method. Regarding budget and fiscal responsibility, the scanning of mail is actually a no-cost service that was included in our contract with Securus.
Interesting. Okay. Will these individuals who are hired to scan the mail be trained to find intel or other pertinent information, or are they just simply scanning and sending them to the mailroom to process? If they're sending them to the mailroom, is Securus going to be the program that we use? Which you clearly just answered that. So thank you.
So another great question. The mail will be received off-site by our communications vendor, that's Securus, like I mentioned. The mail will be opened and digitally scanned at that site. The digital mail will be delivered to facilities for review in the Securus NextGen software. Intel and content review will still be conducted by facility staff just as it is now. The benefit, though, is that in the digital format, we'll be able to do much greater review. We'll have much better capabilities. We'll be able to do searches against a bank of identified terms and phrases, look for patterns. It'll allow us a greater review of all mail and protect our staff from potential exposure to dangerous substances.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Let's jump over to clinical services with our director, Lacey Monday. Good afternoon to you.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hi. Can we please get a drinking water system in the medical records area at DRDC between the clinic and intake?
This is a great question because I know this was brought up to me many moons ago, it feels like now. But the HSA is actively pursuing a water source for the area. And as of Friday, he had sent over a couple of options for us to move this project forward.
Thank you. With our current budget crisis, or just in general, can you explain to us why DOC is paying for breast augmentations?
Yes, this is a very good question as well. This particular treatment was determined by the consent decree, the Raven consent decree. So we are providing the same level of care that is offered in the community. So in the state of Colorado, breast augmentation is approved for transgender individuals. And this is actually funded separately, and we have a specialized funding line for it.
Thank you. The MRT1 position is an entry-level position, and it's one of the least paid, yet we have more duties than an admin 3. How do I motivate my staff to keep going when I know there's no growth for an MRT1 in the clinical area and there's no incentives for them?
So I would love to talk to this person individually to see what they're experiencing in this position. And I know that there are certain classifications throughout the system that we know are not getting paid as high of a rate as the community level. So part of the process of getting something accomplished for us to look at those classifications is doing a system maintenance study. And we have talked about this, but unfortunately right now, because of budget constraints, we haven't been able to move forward on those. But if this individual would like to talk to me about some of their struggles, I'd be happy to chat with them.
Thank you. Let's turn our page over to Finance and Administration. Good afternoon, Ashley Clark.
Hi, Rebecca. Excited to be in the hot seat.
That's right. Here we go. Ready? With all of the issues with bed space and continuous improvement across the state for repeat offenders that disobey a lawful order dictating their facility placement, why are they not charged restitution for the amount of gas they cost the department? And how much gas does the state waste each month on repetitive movements?
So this was an interesting question, and I just want to give a shout out to Captain Kingery for helping us walk through an answer to this question. So Captain Kingery looked into this, and we have less than one forced move per month. The most recent forced moves are actually facility moves, but pending court, such as at Sterling and CCF. These are more or the most common combined with mental health moves. Restitution is usually up to disciplinary procedures and does not include cost of transport. Since this happens so rarely, we don't expect a policy change around it. It would also be very difficult to implement and also to figure out, what percentage of the ride would go to that one individual in restitution. And then as a reminder, inmates can't transport themselves as well. So we may also have an inherent duty to move people. Other inmates move may be caused due to disruptive behavior at the facility, but these typically happen, those moves typically happen when mass transit has already been scheduled.
Thank you. With all the shortfalls in the budget, why are we spending close to $1 million on brand new Teslas and charging stations for the warden?
So I'm really glad that somebody brought this up because I actually want to walk through some of the things that Fleet is doing and how it works. And then Tim is on here in case I say something wrong. He'll jump in and correct me, or if I don't say everything. So the annual vehicle replacement plan for all Colorado state agencies isn't determined by us. It's actually determined 2 years ahead of time by DPA State Fleet Management and the JBC, the Joint Budget Committee. So DOC only just received the finalized list of vehicles being replaced in FY26. That being said, DOC's vehicles are a critical component to DOC's success. And as such, DOC has an obligation to defend and fight for its vehicles to be replaced. In order to replace vehicles, there are processes and procedures DOC must go through. One of those processes is staying compliant with the Greening Government Executive Order, which was just recently extended on Earth Day 2025. So under that Greening Government Executive Order, all state agencies are required to select electric vehicles as a default replacement choice whenever possible to help the state achieve its greening government goals. There are certain car manufacturers and types that the department is allowed to choose from. This includes Teslas, which are one of the more economically efficient EV models with all-wheel drive, which is very important for us because, as you know, weather is wild here in Colorado, and we also have a lot of driving on, around the East Canyon complex, where maybe roads aren't what people think roads are in Denver. So all-wheel drive is very useful in those situations. DOC understands how expensive the upfront investment for electric vehicles is, more so than any other state agency, let's be honest here, because of our large, heavily taxed and aging electrical infrastructure, as well as the sheer number of cars we have. Many at-home chargers were actually secured through a grant that we got with the Colorado Energy Office. And at about $1,100 a charger install, so that's somewhere around $600 for the charger, $500 for the install. The at-home chargers are actually one of the more efficient and cost-efficient ways to electrify our fleet. DOC is also realizing with each additional EV mile traveled, the cost savings benefit that comes with having electric vehicles in the fleet. To put that in English, we get charged for every mile we drive by DPA. And we get charged less when we drive an electric, a lot less. And you can talk to some of your wardens and AWs because I know they've done the math, is a lot less to just drive an EV than it is a regular standard vehicle. The cost per mile for an electric vehicle versus gasoline, like I said, dramatically less. And then every step made today by DOC in regards to fleet electrification is helping to set DOC up on a more strategic, cost-effective, yet sustainable path forward.
Thank you. Thank you for that. As promised earlier, let's talk about step raises and cost of living raises. Let's jump right into that. Will the step raises be funded during fiscal year 25-26? And are there any hidden nuances like the July 1st rule from last year? Can we get some further explanation on this process?
All right, I know this is where we get into a lot of those 2.5% ATV questions that we got. We also sent out a FAQ. I highly recommend you go and look at the FAQ as well if you have questions or concerns. But for this question in particular, the legislature did approve several pieces of the partnership agreement, including funding for step pay, and then a 2% increase to the pay plan, which is in Article 31.4. In addition, the legislature approved a 2.5% across the board or ATB raise for people, and it was funded. And I know in this question, there was a hidden nuance like July 1st rule from last year. That rule still stands. That has not changed. And I know we have another question about that one, but I just wanted to make that clear that nothing else has changed around that.
So isn't there a more equitable way to give these raises, like add everyone's pay together, apply 2.5%, and then divide equally among all employees? That makes everything fair, right?
So thank you for the suggestion. So the 2.5% ATB increase was approved in the partnership agreement under Article 31.1 and signed by the governor in the long bill. So that means it was approved by Cohen's, it was approved by the legislature, and it was approved by the governor. And that was, again, a flat rate for everyone across the board. I also want people, if they have suggestions, to submit them to DPA for review or consideration by the Compensation 2.0 Committee, which is made up of Cohen's and state members. And that's the one where they're really looking at steps and how steps was implemented and if there are better ways that they could have implemented steps. I should note that a proposal like this, where you take all of the raises and just divide them equally among people, could cause compression issues as people aren't getting the same percentage increase.
Okay. Why are staff not moved to their appropriate step, then giving the cost of living adjustment based on that number?
So the application of compensation and specifically salary adjustments is done pursuant to state personnel board rules. In this rule states that the rate resulting from multiple actions effective on the same date shall be computed in a specific order as outlined in Rule 3.8. So we anticipate that the state personnel director will announce the final compensation plan in the next couple of weeks. In addition, the partnership agreement explains the importance of the STEPS 2.0 work group, which I just mentioned a little bit earlier, which will work to redesign the current STEP system into a system that recognizes the party's key priorities, such as total state service, employee retention and recognition, predictability, and relevant experience.
But some of us are getting a pay cut, actually. Cost of living approved at 2.5%, but then the 2.8% differential is being cut.
So that is correct for those specific classifications. The critical staffing incentive was only funded for nurses in the next fiscal year. First, the critical staffing incentive was only meant to be for a short period of time. It was never meant to be in perpetuity. Secondly, the legislature had to cut $1 billion from the governor's budget due to disagreement with some of his proposals. And unfortunately, the critical staffing incentive for all of the staff called out in the partnership agreement was one of the casualties of this.
So why are the ones going on to the next step losing the 2.5% cost of living adjustment?
Right. So again, as kind of outlined in Rule 3.8, we have to do it in a certain order. And so all staff get the 2.5% ATB raise, but step increases are additional raises based on time and series, which is how long you've been in your current job classification. So if you're eligible, you will move to the next step on the pay scale after receiving the 2.5% increase. What that means is no one's going to get less than 2.5%. Some people will get more.
Thank you so much for you and your team clarifying all of that. I know it's a lot for our staff. So thank you, Director, for coming to the table with all of those answers. We really appreciate you. Let's head over back to our Deputy Executive Director, Melissa Smith. Closing things up, Director.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you, Rebecca, for being such a gracious host and really helping us stay on track. I greatly appreciate that. And just to all of you, we just really want to, again, follow up on our earlier conversation, and we'd like to take this opportunity again just to express our sincere gratitude to the staff within the department for the hard work and dedication that you all provide on a daily basis. We do really appreciate and understand what you all do for us, and we just want to say thank you. And then just share again, I know we've had a couple plugs earlier in the chats about our Road Ahead Town Hall on June 3rd at 11 o'clock, but we very much look forward to hosting this event, our first annual event, and are excited to get to share some additional information.
Thank you. We'll have some more communication about the Colorado Department of Corrections, the road ahead, where we're headed, and how we plan to get there. We'll have more communication coming out from our communications team, so look forward to that. Thank you to all of our directors for the hard work you put into these chats each and every month, and thank you to those who are watching for sending in those questions and watching. Thank you. Until next time.